So we got a party of one in here. Are you guys okay out there?
You won't stand long. This will be pretty quick.
Step in if you want.
So we'll let Mr. Neal give an update and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so we've negotiated a term sheet that we're now want to push out to the public. We have a few minor changes that we have today in the language, but nothing substantive. So the substantive points, which would be setback, money, decibel levels, those things that we have discussed many times in here, at least I've reached the best agreement I believe I can get for the county. That'll be published no later than this coming Monday. It'll meet the deadline for the publication in the paper. We're not going to put the terms out today, but they'll come out. We are in agreement, subject to a few minor changes. Along with the term sheet that will come out, you'll also get the schedule for the public debate and the rules of engagement, so to speak, of how we're going to conduct that and where we're going to conduct it. We're going to go back into executive session to kind of refine that, but big picture wise, the idea would be is to have two discussions, one for kind of the morning crowd and one for the evening crowd, so that different people can show up, right, based on your schedules. There will be a time limit on public debate for any individual, but you can always go back to the end of the list. So we'll have a rolling list with the time limit. The commissioners are going to go into a blackout period. What that means is from the publication of the term sheet until the day of the vote, they will not be addressing questions with regard to this directly. The idea is that the public gets their debate out. We want to leave the commissioners alone so that they can actually take input, contemplate it, and then of course we'll have a vote the next commissioners meeting after the two public debates on it. Of course, I will be there to address any technical questions. I'll also introduce the term sheet to everybody, give everyone a summary. Of course, it'll already be published so you can read it, contemplate it, roll around with it, turn it into a paper airplane if you want. Come on, that was kind of funny, everybody.
Listen up.
And then, you know, I'm sure there'll be a robust discussion over the terms. So, any questions on the process? Once again, I'm a process person, so we had a process to get to a term sheet. Now that we have one, we'll have a process for making a decision on that term sheet. Any questions on the process?
The blackout period, Mr. Neal, is that the commissioners as a group that you're referring to?
That's correct. The idea on the blackout period is so that, you know, and this is pretty common. I mean, I grew up in a community just like this. It's going to be common. Everyone's going to want to talk to them while they're drinking coffee at McDonald's. We want to make sure that everybody has the same forum for discussion. That's why we're putting commissioners in a blackout period where they're not going to respond to emails. If you come up and talk to them, they'll talk to you just like a normal citizen. If you ask them questions about this, probably they're going to decline to comment on it. That way, we're trying to keep the discussion in a format where everyone can participate, and then they make an informed decision. So, does that answer your question?
I think so.
Good. Other questions, comments?
Will there be a siting map released?
Yes. Yeah, that will be with the term sheet. That's correct. Yeah. And it will show certain exclusionary zones where they can't go, and it will put a box around where they are going. If that makes sense. Hopefully, I'm a visual person, so I needed everyone to, I needed them to show it on a map as opposed to just putting it on paper and writing. Yes, sir.
Is there a time limit after the hearing when they have to vote?
No, not by law. We are setting as the process that they'll vote the week after the last, the next commissioners meeting a week after the last public forum.
But it's not required?
No, it's not required, no. In fact, if the commissioners need more time to contemplate, or if they may decide to have another public debate, or questions may be raised where they want specific input from next year, especially if it's a scientific or technical question, they may delay and go, we need more. This is a point raised that we hadn't thought of. We need more time to contemplate this, especially from experts in that field, if that makes sense. No. Other questions on the process? All right, I'll give you just my overview. You know, anytime, my charge was to negotiate a term sheet that I thought was fair. Anytime you're in a negotiation, you don't get everything you want because it's give and take on both sides. I'm sure NextAir is mad at me about some things, and I'm mad at them about a few things, but in a business-like and cordial manner. So there'll be, you know, I think it's been my experience a good negotiated transaction usually ends up with people on both sides going, I wish I could have gotten more. But also the majority of the people in the middle look at it and go, okay, I can get my head around why that was negotiated that way. So I hope you see it that way. If not, you can certainly express your displeasure to the commissioners. I certainly have no ego in the document. The idea was to do the best job I could to get it in front of the citizens and then take input, and then we'll go back if we need to and adjust. So, thank you all.
Again, probably next week, we will release the term sheet.
We will
Anticipate.
Yeah,
okay. I just
we will.
wanted to
We are down
make
to
sure.
2 sentences with very minor edits to them, so.
But it won't be before Monday at all. It won't be this week at all.
Well, it won't be today.
It won't be today.
It won't be today, but I suspect it will be fairly quickly after
Okay.
today.
Okay.
So will we release when we get it? We put it on our website?
Yes. Yeah, it'll go to Brad, who'll deliver it to the paper, go on our website. Then, of course, we've negotiated for NextAir to help us deliver that. There are some obligations for NextAir as a developer to deliver it to certain parties within certain locations and to help us publish it on social media and whatnot. And they've expressed the desire to help, obviously, and comply with that. So it should get out to about everybody we can find, so.
But at this point, you don't have the dates of the dates or times of the public hearings.
No, we're going to go back into executive session and refine those dates. That's really what we need to work on today, to refine the dates of the hearings and the locations and the procedures for the hearings. Probably we could push the term sheet today, but I want to get out those procedures as well. That way we're only doing one publication.
Other questions from Mr. Neild?
I have a question,
Sure.
please. So you referred to some minor edits. Those minor edits have been agreed on now?
Yes, in principle. I mean, anytime you have 2 lawyers agreeing in principle, we got to get the commas right. So.
So essentially, the reason you're not going to release this term sheet this morning is because you want to get all the plans in place with regard to the public meetings? and
That's
those
right.
things?
That's right. If we pushed, Alan and I could probably go next door and wrap up the language in 10 minutes. But I want to push out the procedure and the dates and times of the public debate at the same time. So that way it's one clean package.
So bearing in mind, for quite some time, the message, correct me if I'm wrong, that I've received from you and the commissioners is that we'll go at our schedule. We're not afraid to slow this down if you need more time to be patient. And bearing in mind the, as you referred to, the blackout period where the commissioners don't want to answer questions about this, essentially, as I understand it, to maintaining a level playing field for all that have questions. But yet, we're going to consolidate the questioning period or the public meeting to 2 public meetings to provide questions at coincidentally one of the 2 busiest times of the year in this part of the country. It doesn't seem to me when you consolidate that to that narrow of a time frame to provide 2-way discussion that's an ideal scenario for many.
Well, I'll tell you, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to go back into executive session, talk about the times, the locations, and the number. When I say 2, that's my vision of it. I'm not sure that's set in stone. Probably if we get hung up on that, I think it's important and I'd recommend to the commissioners, we've not discussed this yet, I'd recommend if we get hung up on the procedure, we'd probably push the term sheet so it's published on Monday regardless, and then follow with the procedures. Yeah, and I'll tell you also, a bit of the blackout is so the commissioners have some sanity on not getting 5,000 emails and 22,000 calls to try and put that debate, you know, within a certain time period and some rules of engagement behind it. You know, otherwise, I mean, these folks have regular jobs too, you know, and lives. We don't want to overwhelm them with this. So, but we also want to create a forum by which everyone can say what they want to say. We do it in a process. Everyone gets it out. But some people that get really passionate, one side or the other, I mean, they just will chew on the bone on that issue and never stop. And that's not a bad thing. They're passionate about it. But you got to put a little bit of box around it to keep everyone sane.
And I think I understand that, but I'm very concerned about what I perceive as a very narrow window to provide two-way dialogue. And so we've been waiting for the information process for quite some time. Get an opportunity to process, get a relatively very narrow window to provide two-way dialogue on that process, and then make a decision, a huge decision.
Yeah, fair point. I think that's a fair point. You got to balance, reason with that statement as well, but absolutely. I'll tell you the goal is to allow enough time and enough forums for everyone to say everything they want to say. That's the goal. I think we're going to hit that mark as best we can.
One thing, Mr. Neal, that okay, if we release the term sheet next Monday, my vision is the people that have to respond to that probably need a week to gather their information. Would that be fair, or would you be thinking, since we release it April 1st, would we have our first meeting like the next Monday afternoon, April 8th?
No, I think the plan was
Or-
to publish at least 2 weeks before having our meeting. So you're talking probably,
So we publish it 2 weeks, so we'll be in that where you'll have at least, where you're coming from is you want at least a week or two to think about this and get your plan together. And that way you'll have at least them 10 days or 15 to get ready.
As well, Dennis, is, let's just say the weather opens up, sun shining.
Well,
we all have commitments, you understand that.
I understand.
As well as anybody, and you have to make a decision, do I spend time on something that potentially can affect us for the next, or affect this community for the next century, or do I go do what I need to do to pay my bills?
no. Well, we're planning, the meetings are gonna be half a day, you know, and I'm sure that many of you take half days off and go someplace no matter what time of the year it is. I know some of you are not, but at the same time, we're not planning on eating up a whole day. We're planning on like a half day and then an evening. And we'll go from there.
I wasn't questioning the duration of the meetings themselves. I was questioning, and I know you didn't clarify, but I'm very concerned about, so we have the meetings and expediting this process and have feeling that you need to make a decision within a few days or maybe immediately after the second meeting, and bearing in mind the limited opportunity, namely a meeting, to have that two-way dialogue. That seems, especially at this time of year, would be potentially limiting a lot of people with providing input and engaging in that dialogue. If the objective is to provide a process to get input from a good cross-section, if not everyone.
It feels like to me that NextEra is stalled till we're busy, and now, I mean, everybody knows how far behind every farmer in this county is, so I think if we could push it off till May, till guys get caught up some, I mean, it's gonna be, if it's dry, farmers are not gonna show up, they're just too far behind.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. On the delay side, I can tell you, I mean, I've been negotiating with them weekly, sometimes daily. They're not delaying. Certainly nothing intentional. If anything, probably the biggest delay was I ended up with a death in my family. Some of y'all may know, and that put us back almost 10 days. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, it's just factual.
And that's just what it feels like.
Sure, yeah, no, but I can tell you, I've been closer to it. They're not intentionally delayed. With regard to, I mean, I grew up in a farming and ranching community, you know, so I can appreciate your statement on that. On the timing, I very much appreciate your statement on that. At least my recommendation, and once again, this is what we're honing in on now, today. Ideally, we'll come to a conclusion on it. But the idea is to have one meeting in the daylight hours and one meeting in the evening hours. We think that's, and if you put enough space between it, right, I think we're going to be able to catch people that are not tied up during the daylight hours, and the farmers and ranchers in the evening hours. Yeah, you can be tired that evening. I mean, there's nothing to be said about it.
I know our operation will be running from daylight till midnight. That's the way it's gonna be. You can see the writing on the wall.
And we'll try to accommodate that with a window there, and yeah, you might have to shut off the planter for an hour to come in and make your public comment, but there will be.
And I guess that's okay, I will do that, but there's a lot of people that maybe are a little more neutral that aren't going to do that. That's my concern.
Well, and I think that, listen, if we look in the crystal ball and try to solve every conflict, we'll never be able to come up with a process. But I will say there's no time period by which a vote has to happen. I would like to think that the commissioners know the community well enough to know whether or not they've gotten a good cross-section they need to set a third meeting. Or, once again, the process we're going to use is by sign-up. And let me tell you, if we go through the second meeting and there's still 90 names on the sign-up sheet, we're going to have another meeting. It just can't cut it off and leave 90 people without a voice to be heard. If we finish up the second meeting and there were only 5 people that spoke during that meeting, well, you know, okay, probably we hit the nail on the head. We got a little closer to being able to catch everybody. But there's no, just because we put the process out there doesn't mean we can't add a date to it. And that may be wise, but if I try and look in the crystal ball right now and guess, I'm always going to be wrong. So I got to guess and do something that feels the best possible, and then adjust from there if we can. That makes sense. And I tell you, I've worked till midnight, did a lot of stuff you've done, so I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Commenting on Ryan's comment, I don't think he meant that NextEra was maybe purposely delaying anything, but the situation is what's happened. Because of the weather, this is going to open up big time for every farmer that's out there. And his point of trying to wait out till into May makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I'm not a farmer. But guys on the panel certainly are and understand this. So we've already gone this far. Why would not a couple, 3 more weeks putting this off till the 1st of May or mid-May? I think that makes sense, and what's the difference?
Well, and just one thing to consider, because once you do that, I've got 3 boys in school. May is maddening for those with kids in school. You have end of the year concerts, end of the year graduations, end of the year, so many things going on. So then it becomes difficult for them. Then when you get to the end of May, school's out, families are taking vacations, so then you hit those conflicts. So I think anytime we do this, we're going to hit some conflict. I don't think we can avoid that.
I got 19 grandkids, and we're doing that every day.
Yeah.
Not during.
I'm just telling you that I know it becomes very busy then. So we're going to hit conflicts no matter when we schedule this.
I like to work comes before vacation.
Other comments on the process?
I tend to agree, lives this day and age are always busy, but essentially the point I made, one of the two busiest times of the year we're approaching right now. I mean, I don't think that's, I think it's somewhat disingenuous to compare vacation time to planting or harvest time.
Well, and that was just an example. I'm just trying to say, we're gonna run into conflicts with people probably no matter when we schedule this.
But it would be nice to minimize those conflicts and the mandatory conflicts.
Yeah, and that's what we're gonna make sure that we schedule at least 2 meetings for everybody so they can pick which time works best for them to come in and make their public comment.
Regarding blackout time, we're looking at no communication for a period, and we're also looking at the public comment meetings. What if there are citizens that do not feel comfortable giving public comment and they would like to contact commissioners privately via mail, email?
That's actually a great question. Yeah, but let me clarify the blackout period. In the process, we're going to ask that people not communicate with the commissioners during the blackout period. But if they want to, because that's the only way they can communicate, they can, just not to expect a response. The idea is to not cause the commissioners to debate it in 2 different forums, one private and one public. Does that make sense? So certainly anyone who wants, they're elected officials, you can send them an email anytime you want, or provide any communication you want to them. That's their job.
So is there a preferred way for people who want to communicate that way to communicate with them?
That's a great comment, and we'll probably publish maybe the best way to do that. That's a really not good comment. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for raising that. Other comments on the procedure?
The edits to the actual language of the term sheet, obviously you want to get those worked out by next week.
Mm-hmm.
The siting map, though, has no changes to be made. Is there any reason that can't be released today?
No, other than my preference to release it as a combined package. It's totally my preference.
Okay.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just like to, here's your packet, here's everything involved with it, and it goes out together. But yeah, the actual site map is approved, except for the exact location of the turbines. And in the term sheet, there's a process by which we'll receive those. And then the commissioners have yet another chance to approve or disapprove the entire project based upon the actual location of the turbines.
Well, the reason I ask is this project has started out tiny and has kept growing. And I think that's the single biggest concern of a lot of people in this county.
Mm-hmm.
And the map would let them begin to process some facts instead of supposition. So that's why I felt like it would be valuable.
Sure. And the commissioners, they obviously just heard that. They can decide. And if they tell me to publish it, that would not be my recommendation. And that's just more common sense and simplicity from my standpoint. If I send one packet, then I know that's the right packet and people are looking at the right information, rather than y'all meeting at the coffee house and going, well, we got this on this date and this on this date, you know, and I think that would cause more confusion, even if they're exactly the same, simply because you get them on different dates. And that's totally just my opinion on it. I could be wrong, but that's at least my recommendation. At least I can put some rationale behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a little concern about the comment that Nexera would be helping to release the term sheet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I fully understand what that entails and how that might look.
Sure. So,
because there's all sorts of ways to advertise, and I certainly think that as neutral of a publication as possible is what we should be shooting for.
sure, yeah, and that's a great point. So that was my idea, and the reason for that is we want to get the information out as broadly as possible. We have our own forum for publication. That's the website and the paper, right? In our term sheet, we require that NextEra deliver to certain citizens individually within a certain radius. So I'm making sure those people closest to this deal are absolutely getting it, okay? And that takes the expense off the county. And then we're asking that they publish it on their social media sites. That is a good comment. I may add, if you don't mind, I'm going to steal a little bit of your idea, that they have no comment on it other than here it is. And I could probably add something like that in there. They would not object to that.
I think it'd be reasonable to have the commissioners review that prior to publication, if that were not already the case.
That's a fair comment. Yeah, that way there's not a statement out there that overly sells it in one way or the other. That's fine. The concept was fairly innocent, not fairly innocent, it is innocent to begin with. We want help getting this out to as many people as possible with the least amount of expense to the county. We have our own regular publications, and I thought, you know, let's get those guys helping us out.
Sure.
So that was the origination of the idea.
And that reminds me, somebody has a Facebook page that's following this issue, and who the administrator of that is. I'd be happy to, when we send it to the newspapers and we publish it, to send it to that individual too, so the word gets out.
No.
So why wouldn't you just let the NextEra pay for the county to distribute that? Then there's no bias.
I think they would agree to that as well. The idea also is manpower and letting people do it. You know, we'd have to tap somebody to do that. But from a legal perspective, we have a certain process we have to follow. The county's doing that. Anything that NextEra is doing is just extra stuff we've asked them to do to help get the word out in a better manner, if that makes sense. Now, probably when we go into executive session, we're probably going to raise that comment you just said. You know, the idea is not to have any bias. The idea is to get it out to as many people as we can.
Anything else for Mr. Neild?
So it seemed to me that the county just choosing that methodology with how that's distributed would be the fairest way. I mean, everyone has equal access to the county website, to the commissioners, and
Hit me with your comment a little bit more direct.
the county distributing the term sheet and accompanying information would seem to me would be the most level, even, fair way to distribute it, because everyone in the county has the same access to the commissioners and to the county website, whereas the entire county does not have access to NextEra and vice versa.
Yeah, I think my goal, and I'll disagree with you a bit there, and I feel fairly strongly about this. My goal has been to get the most participation from the most citizens, right? And I think that's a good goal. That's a noble goal. The best method to do that is get the information out there in as many forums as we possibly can. So we kind of have this legal requirement for the commissioners to push out information. We'll comply with that at the county's expense. I'm also asking that certain citizens within a certain area of this footprint get direct mailings, right? Boom, there you go. And then I'm also asking that they assist through their social media, and then of course we're going to do our own social media. Now, I think that gets to the most citizens possible. Now, whether I can't restrict NextEra or any developer for going out on their own and promoting this however they want. Just like we can't, I mean, if you guys want to go out and hold your own town hall and argue for or against, or James needs to shave his beard, right? You can go say whatever you want in whatever forum you want, as long as you abide by the law. So the fact that NextEra may promote this, that is up to them as a business decision. Whereas another group of citizens may very well want to promote against it. That's up to them as a group of citizens. I tell you, if you want to help us and mail out some, we'll take that help as well. You can put it however you want. But the goal is that the majority of people, by the most methods possible, know when there's going to be a hearing and what we're going to talk about. And I think that's a noble goal. I think that's a goal we should all aspire to.
You indicated with regard to mailers anyway, seeking to mail out notices comprised of NextEra's footprint. So is that their original footprint or the later footprint, or are we talking
The packet,
all the locations?
just the packet. Whatever packet we're gonna publish is what we're asking NextEra to mail and publish.
Now, that mailing, is it gonna come from the Nemaha County Clerk, or is it gonna have NextEra as a return address? Because that would determine whether or not a piece of mail even got opened.
That's a fair comment. At least my vision was it would come from NextEra, however the heck they want to get it to them. Yeah. The county's not required to give notice to the populace within a certain area. They're required to put public notice out. So this is an additional thing that I thought would be wise to make sure people know what's going to happen here.
If this is a conditional use permit, part of planning and zoning, even though we're not zoned, we're making believe, as Brad said many months ago, that requires notification of anybody within such a distance of the footprint.
Yeah, it's not a conditional use permit.
So, just to be clear, you're essentially, the mailers would cover the latest footprint or the original footprint?
It would be the.
Or are we talking all the areas and townships in Nemaha County where they've leased land?
Yeah, it would simply be the term sheet packet. The same packet that we put out is gonna be what we're asking NextEra to help us send out to the public. And also, and maybe I need to flip around here, if we think that's a bad idea, I didn't quite I expected the opposite. More information to more people is good, but if everyone's a little worried that NextEra is going to do something sneaky to try and over-publicize it, hadn't really considered that fact. We may pull back from that. The idea is not to promote it one way or the other. The idea is to get it out, right? That's the intent. And by it is the term sheet packet, which would be the term sheet, the footprint, and of course the procedures for the public hearings. Does that make sense?
And the thing is, you guys, the reason we want to get as many people with knowledge of this as possible, we have a lot of public hearings. And inevitably, there's people coming in saying, huh, I didn't know about it. Well, it's published in the paper twice, you know, and we did all this and that. We did what we was required to do, but it wasn't there. So I feel that we should invite any way to get as many people knowledge as we can, and we'll hold hope, and we will look at what NextEra is going to put out if they'll let us, and they want to do that so that it's not, we don't feel it's biased one way or the other. But I feel like the more people we get that knowledge that at least we're having a meeting and this is there, so that they don't come in 2 weeks after it's all over and say, I didn't know nothing about it. You know, that's my worry as one commissioner.
And I agree with you. I think, and I would venture to guess, most everyone in here agrees that the ideal scenario is to get as much participation throughout the county as possible.
Yeah.
My preference would be that that's not skewed in any way.
Sure.
And simply by the way something is worded, or simply by targeting.
But we're not required by law to send a mass mailing to every registered voter in Nemaha County of a public meeting. You know, we're required to put it in the paper and do what we can do there, put it on our website, and that's probably where we will stop unless we feel like it's necessary in this situation, because this is a little different situation, and we want you all to feel comfortable that we're trying to hold up and do what we can do is make it visible for everybody here. The thing I don't want is I don't want people that didn't know about it. And the other thing is we all need to respect the rights of every citizen in Nemaha County. You know, we got to understand that tomorrow we still got to work with them. We still got to be neighbors. And I feel like no matter what the outcome, you can have your feelings, but you know, we got to be careful of how we handle our situation. Let's do it right, and respectful, and I think it'll be a good situation. I really do.
I have a question.
Good points, by the way. Let's go over here.
The official notification by law only has to be in the Courier Tribune, but
Right.
Mary Kay's policy is to put it also in the Sabetha paper because of the way our county has two towns.
Sure.
Because the last time that NextEra did a public notification, it only landed in the Seneca paper, did not make it to the Sabetha paper. I think part of what our concerns in this room maybe is we don't want a repeat of that failure to fully notify an odd county. We have an odd county. It's just odd to have two towns this size, and one of them far, far, far on the east side.
We'll also put it in the Sabetha paper.
Okay, and so I think that may be part of this, but my question, this direct mail, are you implying that it would mail to everyone in every township that has active wind leases?
No, it requires a certain area, right? And also, based upon the comments I've heard, I didn't expect that, which is fine. I mean, I'm not going to be perfect. We'll probably back off from that and do it a different way.
I'm all for getting it to everybody that could be affected. I love that idea.
Yeah.
I'm concerned, I'm confused, not concerned. I'm confused about the area. Like, what area would an address get this, and what area would it not get it?
It's the footprint is what we require, but probably in line. I didn't quite expect the feedback, which is good. That's why we have feedback, right?
Sure.
Probably we might back off from that a bit. And I don't think, I have no impression whatsoever. In fact, the opposite. I think next year would go out of their way to submit it as blandly as I might request and we might require. But I am sensitive to the potential, I forget who said it, someone may not even open it, right? Or there may be an implication because it comes on that letterhead or in that envelope, an implication one way or the other. I think that's a good comment, and I haven't really considered that.
And just my comment about every township, just so you're aware, I'm not sure anyone's told you this yet, but every township in our county has active wind leases. Not necessarily all NextEra, although they have in nearly every township. So when we talk about a footprint, and the rest of us, we're so in the dark on whether the term sheet covers just this project, does it cover the whole county, what's it like for Invenergy, I mean, there's a lot that we don't know because we've not been part of any of the dialogue. So if we're asking a lot of questions, I think it's just pent up curiosity or concern.
Oh, questions don't bother me.
Okay, so that's why,
here all day.
but literally every township in our county by the Register of Deeds has active wind leases. So, yeah, how does this play out for the rest of the townships other than the footprint?
Well, let's talk about the procedure for a moment. Number one, there hasn't been a decision made on it. We have Brad, I think, sent out some ideas. We're going to discuss those in executive session. Also, I thought at least one of the things was for sure we'd have the direct mailings. Frankly, based on the comments, I'm stepping back on that a bit. So we're going to discuss that, but the idea is that if we do a direct mailing, it would be through NextEra or some form of reimbursement, right? Which is probably the better plan now. That also creates challenges on timing, getting it out timely. They're a big company, they can task people to do it, it happens quicker, right? We're a small county, and we got to dedicate people and resources. We
only have so many people stuffing envelopes.
Or dedicate our resource here, right?
Yes.
By the way, we have another open hearing. Everyone's going to have to lick envelopes. So come with a lot of spit. But then that creates a bit of a timing issue as well. But nothing's been decided yet. Good questions. And as far as the anticipation, we had to set some procedure. All will be revealed on Monday. So I guess just be patient another week, and then hopefully you look at it and it hits as close to the mark as we can.
Wouldn't an unbiased solution to distributing it widely, even to every citizen in the county, be an outside service and just let NextEra pick up the bill?
It potentially, but listen, at some point, yes, that could be a solution. I don't know the cost of that. I was about to decry it a bit for the cost, but I don't know that for sure. So, yeah. No, I think that's a fair comment. There's, approximately 35,000-ish residents.
Oh,
No.
10.
10.
10, I'm sorry, 10,000.
Not nearly that many households.
Yeah, no. You know, I don't know. That bill may be bigger than you might think. I don't know. Yeah, good comment. Other questions, comments on procedure?
I have another question, if you don't have to go somewhere else. It's my understanding that, did you say when the packet is released, the siting map won't include turbine locations, is that correct?
That is correct.
So why is it?
From an engineering standpoint, they don't have it yet, right? They have diameters such that we could ascertain setbacks, but there's going to be a requirement to submit the location of the turbines for the commissioner's approval at a later date. Okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so what that means is the term sheet will either be approved or disapproved. If it is approved, then there's another step they have to go before their project is approved, and that additional step is the actual location of the turbines and to ensure of whether or not they're going to comply with that setback requirement that we have in the term sheet. They just don't have it yet. That's the main point. Other questions?
If I can just add to that, James. So the term sheet itself includes siting guidelines. Until those siting guidelines are approved by the commissioners, then there really is nothing for us to design yet. So we don't have a design around any setbacks or new requirements there because we're not making the assumption. Until there's public comment, until the commissioners approve, there is no siting guideline. That's why. Sorry, just wanted to add that point.
Yeah. And if y'all didn't hear him over there, he said, we can't locate the turbine until what the setbacks are. We don't know the setbacks until you vote and tell us what the setbacks are. It's just, yeah. So.
So if you give us that little square or area that you think it's going to go, is that going to be held to that? Like there's no changing that area?
Yes.
Yeah, I will fudge a bit on that. I suspect that they will want a bit of a variance. You know, when they say it's going to go right there, we'll probably give them a 10-foot variance or something around that. That way they can adjust it just a bit if it's easier to dig 2 feet that way versus 2 feet this way. But yes, as a general statement, that's correct. Last call, at least for today.
It seemed to me that where given turbines are sited would be a significant component in how a number of people feel about their input on the term sheet.
I don't think that. I think that the setback is important. I think that the health and safety issues, sound, stuff of that nature are important, right? But as long as the setbacks are right and I'm pointing to this, not that this is it, but just as an example, as long as they're within a contained area and the setbacks are right, then I think that is going to be the major concern. Now, I want to emphasize again, the commissioners still have the right to approve the exact location of turbines in compliance with the guidelines we approve, we being the commissioners.
Is it not feasible to release a preliminary siting map showing the locations of the turbine if those numbers stand as they're presented?
When we get them, we can release them, sure. There's going to be a gap between, let's go forward on the term sheet and let's sign the written agreements, and that gap requires that the location of the turbines be out there. As soon as the commissioners get that, we'll release it, and then there's going to be, they're either going to be in compliance or they're not. And if they're in compliance, then sign the agreements. If they're not in compliance, then don't sign the agreements. So as far as releasing that to the public, absolutely, no reason not to. Probably won't go through as much as we went through this time, probably the normal, what I'll call normal release. you know, what the county commissioners would normally release.
Can't do much in here without one of these.
Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. I guess I'm just, what's the downside to NextEra presenting a map as the numbers stand now, pending upon if the term sheet is approved by the county? In other words, it's my understanding that they presented siting maps with locations of turbines in other areas much further advanced in the process than is going to happen in this process. And I'm just wondering why. Is that not the case?
Well, if you're talking about like places where they submit it as usually at the more final stage as opposed to this where we don't even have the guidelines that's kind of mentioned. Yeah, those would be when they're already established as in zone locations where all that's established, so there can be further micrositing as part of that process where that hasn't been able to be done yet. So there wouldn't, I don't think it'd be even remotely at the same stage in order to do that.
I still wonder why you can't present under the guidelines, under the terms of the term sheet as it's presented. Say if these terms stand, this is where the turbines will be located. If they don't, we'll have to reevaluate that.
Well, and
I think it would just give us all a better picture of what's going to happen.
At least for me in my negotiations, I feel comfortable with where we're at least comfortable enough to present it. I think that's a valid concern, and I think you should raise that and make NextEra respond to that. The response to me has made sense, makes common sense. We can't locate it till you tell us how far we have to be out, and until you vote and tell us how far we're going to be out, we're not going to spend the money to do the micro location. That makes common sense to me. If it doesn't to you, that's absolutely fine. I've been in the city a while, so my common sense meter may be a little off, right? But you should raise it at public hearing. That's not something I'd recommend we delay things for, though, at this stage. Especially in light of the fact I've got the big protection at the end that says if they come out and show us the turbines are cattywampus to what we originally said. Cattywampus is a legal term, by the way. If it's cattywampus to the first site plan we gave you, right, we can still project it, right? And the citizens are all going to have a copy of it to double check us, make sure they're correct.
I don't know. I'm probably not doing a very good job of explaining myself, but it seems to me, I'm trying to visualize how this is all going to work, but it seems to me that for those of us in the footprint of this project, we have more tangible facts, namely turbine locations, to address and say, okay, how does this look? How's this all going to work out? I mean, so it's looking at it from a resident's perspective. I think it would be easier for me to process if I knew where the turbines were going to be located as to how I felt.
Okay, James, do you mind if I add to that? Just to give just kind of the other perspective too.
Absolutely.
Obviously, individuals like yourself are concerned about the turbine locations, but there's also the landowners that are involved in the project too. So we release a preliminary rate so that folks that are opposed can kind of have a better, sense of what it maybe could look like possibly, but there's no such chance. But then you have also to think about the people that would be getting the turbines on the ground and would like to have the turbines on the ground. And now you've put them in a position where, hey, this looks real great to me, and then now we're at the public debate and you have people that are upset because they see the turbines on the map, they want them, and now there's people that are saying things that would cause those turbines to go away. So I think I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, that certainly presents a situation where you have people who are starting to bank on certain things that are not certain.
See, I looked at that completely different. I thought it would be a value for those that want the turbines and and see them as well. I thought maybe I missed something, but I thought it would be a win-win for residents in the county.
Well, and guys, I'm gonna jump in here that seem to be going a bit of a private debate. I wanna make sure we're being cognizant of everybody's time. The real debate over here is, the real question, as I'm viewing it, is, wouldn't it be best if we had the location of the turbines? The answer is absolutely yes. I'm a visual person. We don't have it. We're not gonna have it until we give them the rule book, but we have the right to accept or reject the location of the turbines later. To me, that seemed like a very reasonable approach. And at least that's why I recommended that approach. That's going to be in the term sheet, by the way. So nothing I can change on that right now. So that's going to come out on Monday, or whenever we get it out. I want to move on to other points, and certainly we can pick that up after the meeting, but I think we beat that a little bit. Thank you, sir. Other points or comments? Sir.
These turbines are only gonna be on the ground that NextEra is leased, right? They're not gonna be on any ground that they didn't lease. Am I right on that?
That's correct. I will say, I want to add and expand on that a bit. They might have support locations, right, on county land, for example, using right-of-ways or stuff like that to help facilitate that turbine, right? And as for the actual location of the turbines, we don't know where they're at yet, okay? But there's been no request to place any of them on county land. So it's all on private land as far as I can tell. Yes, sir.
It's all on private land.
Yes, sir.
And so the ones that don't want them, they didn't lease. So why, what is the difficulty about it?
Well, I mean, we've heard this, and it'll come up in debate. People don't like the way they look. They're scared about some health concerns, and some legitimately so. And all those concerns are fine.
But if we get in that way they look, we could say, well, you got an old barn here, it don't look right. You got an old silo.
Sure.
Let's start eliminating them.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Otherwise, my wife would never marry me. That's true. But I also don't want to discount anyone's argument against them. People have legitimate reasons why they don't want them, and I think they should express those.
And then getting to your meetings, I think that's fine, because everybody made it to their wedding, to get married. If they want to go to church, they can make it there. So we can make it to the meetings. Now, that's my opinion. You know, if you want to go to a fishing trip, you're going to make it.
That's a fair point, fair counterpoint. And also respectful of, remember I grew up on a ranch, so I've worked till midnight, and I know that as well. But I will say, you know, we're never going to pick the perfect process. I'm just never going to pick it. I'm never going to hit the middle of the fairway with this thing. The best thing I can do is tee off and get it as close to the middle of the fairway as I can. And I think we're trying to hit that as best we can. Other comments?
With regard to the term sheet, obviously you've been talking about NextEra. Invenergy, as we all know, has also approached leaseholders. And would I be correct in saying that the term sheet in one way or another will address how the county might move forward outside any agreements with NextEra?
Yeah, it does not address anything but the NextEra project. However, and I think you guys have heard me, my recommendation to the commissioners is to adopt regulations involving both wind and solar. And that, I've drafted that, presented it to the commissioners. I anticipate that will be presented in a very short time period after either the term sheet's accepted or rejected. So, and that will go out to the public once again for debate, and there'll be a period of process to discuss it, whether or not it's in or out. If the commissioners decide to present it to the public, I'm sure I'll be tasked with sending a letter to companies that we think are looking at our county to make them aware that that legislation is likely, or is pending, I should say. Does that make sense? Does
Yes,
that answer your question?
It does. So a follow-up question on that. If we, as a county, enter into an agreement with NextEra, would I be correct in saying that that affects how we might be able to enter into agreements with other companies?
Sure. In fact, the draft legislation that I drafted, once again, commissioners haven't approved it yet, so keep that in consideration, contains almost exactly the same term sheet terms as we have pending with NextEra. A couple of adjustments, just things I couldn't quite negotiate that I would have liked if I could make all the decisions on my own. So we'll probably ratchet it up on a couple of areas, but I don't view that as a bad thing, I view that as a good thing.
So I think where that all leaves my mind is that as we talk about mailings or presentations or any type of presentation to the public with this information, if we're presenting a footprint of what NextEra's area is along with these terms, when in reality, down the road, that can very easily affect the entire county outside those boundaries as well. That's kind of where my concern is at, I guess, or my question for you, because I'm not really sure how do we get other users, other residents who may not be in that footprint to feel that the terms that we're reaching with NextEra does affect them as well.
Yeah, I think I want to keep the two discussions separate, right? This is the NextEra deal, we're either going to take it or we're not, right? On the legislation for the county, that's going to be different, and that's ideally should concern, to the extent people aren't concerned because it's not in their backyard, they're not in their footprint, therefore they don't care. Some people may feel that way. The legislation would affect the entire county. And ideally, the mailings and the publications would entice them to come enter into that discussion. But for this, I do want to keep it separate. Otherwise, you're going to mix apples and oranges. You know, the old Ghostbusters don't cross the streams or bad things happen, right?
And
I want to keep this discussion on this one project.
I think my comment probably was more intended for the three guys behind the table and maybe our newspaper folk in the room, so.
Oh, sure, yeah, and by the way, I'm not a decision maker. Anyone who makes a comment here, I may respond to it. The commissioners can trump me, overrule me, do whatever the heck they want. I'm just trying to facilitate the discussion and add whatever input I can.
To follow up on Brad's comment, then, in the notification process for these hearings, whether it's by direct mail or newspaper or whatever, shouldn't it be in there that there is a correlation to some degree between this agreement and what may affect the entire county? Because won't it cross over to some degree, or is it completely separate?
Completely separate. In fact, this project is excluded from the legislation that is being contemplated. And I think
precedent is set if whatever.
Other than I think I like where we ended up, therefore I presented to the commissioners similar terms in the legislation that would be permanent. Yeah. I mean, we did use this as an opportunity to learn. You know, certainly I've learned a lot. And we've taken that education and that tuition and applied it to the legislation.
I have just a logistical question for next Monday. The release will occur after, I assume, another executive session, or not, maybe whatever. It'll just release.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
It's not going to be discussed, right?
That's correct. In fact, it'll probably, you know, ideally we get to the procedures today. I get the little tweaks in the language done. It'll probably release even before Monday, but I understand there's the publication's on Monday only, right?
For the Courier, yes, I believe Sabetha is a day later, if that mattered.
Sure, we're gonna get it to the papers, and then whenever they can publish it, they'll publish it. But I fully anticipate there's not gonna be a big announcement on Monday, it's just gonna already be there and it will go. That's what I anticipate will happen.
So the commissioners can do business as usual Monday. They won't have a room full of people.
Probably.
I mean, is there any reason, anything to be discussed Monday is my question.
As of right now, I don't think so.
Okay.
I won't be here unless someone asks a question that raises my eyebrows more than it's already been raised.
I think I was hearing, I just wanted to make sure.
We need time to process as does everyone else.
Yes, absolutely.
Process further for us, put it that way.
What about the website? Will it be updated to the website as soon as it's approved? That could be before Monday.
It could be, yes.
Okay.
Right, yeah. I don't know the logistics of that, but once I chop on it, it's ready to go. How it goes out is somewhat immaterial
Yeah,
to me
so
as long
as
as
soon
it
as
gets
my
out.
office gets it, we'll be able to post it to the website.
Okay, great.
And Heidi, I can send that to you directly too, so that you can link, put it on MSC News and link it.
I'm assuming you would have copies available if somebody wanted to pick them up. You could print them all.
Ken, is that something that I'd charge for or not in this case? Normally we do charge the
Yes, we can talk about that.
copies. I think that's a procedural thing maybe that needs to be worked out.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? So we've had a Ghostbusters reference, a Cattywampus reference. Forget what other references might have had. All right, seeing none, thank you all. Appreciate your input and time.
Any questions?
Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen.
Should we go into further executive session?